Hello, BookTube. I've got a Friday Reads for you, my first Friday Reads of the year. I've been gone for 2 weeks, thereabouts, and I'm still feeling my way back into making BookTube videos. And so I'm sticking with the staples, the basics, tags, mail openings, and Friday Reads, which I hope will be a basic throughout the year. I really like watching them. They are sort of a yardstick of where we are at the moment in our reading. And mostly my Friday reads are books that I have read and want to talk about a little, or that I'm going to read. Because we're so early in the year, I think this Friday reads will be almost entirely books that I have not read that are coming up soon. So I've got a few of them to show you here. I'm hoping that the lighting behaves itself. The first one is a romance novel of Arlie Bowman, who is behind me on this shelf a few times. This is The Duke Deal, which is it's the Whitmoreland series, and I think it's the first book in that series. And its plot is you've got a classic Regency cover there, although modern classic. He's got his hands all over her when they aren't married, and she's wearing a bright, shiny red silk dress cut all the way down to the nape of her neck, which wouldn't have worked, but you get the point. And this is the story of a young woman who marries a duke and thinks that everything is perfect. She thinks that she's in love with him, and their relationship hits the rocks right away, and they live apart until circumstances throw them together, where they have to act the part of a happily married couple, the happily married couple that society thinks they are. And the young woman involved really wants this to happen, and her husband makes her agrees, but with conditions. And the condition is that she has to share his bed every night, and not chastely, not necessarily. He would like an heir. So we'll see. This author is really good. We'll see how it goes. I'm not in any danger with this author of her just complacently sitting on cliches. She will work the narrative. That's a known quantity for me, and that's really nice. Then this next one is also a known quantity. His debut novel was one of the most lauded debut novels of the 21st century. Lots and lots of people read it. Everyone in the critical community either read it or claimed that they had read it. The author is Stephen Markley, and he was the author of Ohio, and this is his new book, The Deluge, which I think is set 10 years ago, and I believe that it is a climate change novel, but I don't know much about it. I've kept myself intentionally in the dark. I will learn what this author has to do. I was tremendously impressed by Ohio. And the number one thing that impressed me about Ohio is, I gather, the number one thing that's happening in this book too, which is this author's amazing ability to handle a giant chorus of different narrative focal points, narrative voices, believably and evenly, so that you don't feel like the author's taken on more than he can handle. That was very prominent in Ohio. We'll see. I gather that it's the structure of this book. Then we have something for the gays. You got to have something for the gays. This is When London Snow Falls by Hayden Stone. Disturbing trend in romance novels where not only are the characters on the cover cartoons, but they don't have faces, which is disturbing on a whole bunch of different levels. I know probably the marketing pitch is that it allegedly allows the reader to put themselves in the position all the more, but it's still creepy and underscores the formulaic nature of the books, which I'm hoping this is not formulaic. This is a gay story about that again is fairly typical, like The Duke Deal, where the main character is poor and out of luck with love and done with men, and into his life comes a whirlwind of a figure, a glittering pop star who seems shallow and seems like they would never connect at all, seems like they'd never even know each other, and instead a connection happens. Now that, as you can tell right away, that is extremely familiar territory. We'll just have to see what the author does with it. I think the author has an extensive publishing career. I may have even read the author before, so it may be, when you've got someone who has 6 or 7 books under their belt, either that means that they have learned how to subvert the tired old cliches of what they're doing, or it means that they've discovered a large audience that doesn't want them to. we'll see what I'm in for. The next book isn't the same old thing. It almost has no, I don't think it has any exact precedent, but it certainly has very few close precedents at all. And I've been meaning to get to it. It's been all over the news, but I want to give the book a chance to talk myself. This is Spare by Prince Harry, who is, the title refers to an heir and a spare, which was the typical goal of British royalty for 1,000 years. You get a male heir, and then you get a second male son in case something happens to the first one. In this case, in this day and age, there's very little likelihood that Prince Harry is way down on the list in terms of the line of ascension to the throne, because the line of ascension goes through his older brother and his older brother's male heirs, or maybe even female heirs, maybe just heirs in general, heirs of his body, which would mean that William's family would have to die in a ski lift entirely for Harry to even have a chance. But that's not. I mean, if you're familiar, a devotee of the House of Windsor, then you will naturally remember the scandal that attended the Duke of Windsor writing a memoir and his scandalous wife writing memoirs. You will remember maybe the scandal that attended Marion Crawford writing a memoir of her time being the nanny to Princess Elizabeth and her sister, that got her expelled from royal circles. Times have changed. No one expects you not to have a book deal. I'm trying not to prejudge this book. I have followed a bit of the adventures in the media of this person and his wife. I followed enough of their adventures in the media to have a negative impression of both of them. I don't think it's possible to have a positive impression of them based on their treatment in the media. But that's not the book. I will read the book to see what this imbecile, it's got Prince Harry on the cover, but I doubt very much, unless these still waters run exceedingly deep. I think these still waters are a frozen puddle, so I'm pretty sure that someone else wrote this thing. But I'll give it a try anyway. I want to judge it on its own merits. Then we come back to known quantities. This is about as known quantity as you get. This is Without a Trace, the new Danielle Steele. It'll take an hour to read. This author is still going strong after 50 years of writing, after writing, 10 novels a year. They're still attractively done. They still are rolled out in hardcovers. They still are stacked up in new release sections of bookstores. I'm not going to ignore a phenomenon like that. If I'm not going to ignore it with Stephen King, I'm not going to ignore it with Danielle Steele. Then we have Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition. This is a translation by Ian Patterson. I won't say that it's part of a Proustuary, but nevertheless, Penguin has been slowly rolling out these Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition of translations of Remembrance of Things Past by Proust. And this is Finding Time Again. This is volume 7, I think. A pretty deluxe edition to go with all the others, to go with the whole row of them. I have been keeping up with these as they come out. I haven't been really doing the kind of dedicated, insane deep dive on this book that I want to do. But then again, does anybody ever? I don't know if anybody ever does. Doom Antidote maybe is the only one who does. But I have not got to it yet, so I will give it a try. I've got to the book in the Moncrief translation, but a totally new translation, something that's not updating Moncrief at all. That's a little bit more of terra incognita. Then we have something that is known to me. I wasn't going to indulge in it myself, but one of you sent me a UK hardcover of Volume 1. We're now up to Volume 3, I believe this is. This is the Diaries of Chips Canon, edited by Simon Heffer. These are big 1,000-page books. Chips Canon's diaries are famous, or at least they once were. In any anthology of great diary entries, they will be all over it. They'll be all over it. He was an invaluable observer of the upper crust and the doers and shakers of his day, and managed to keep it fresh. So these are really a publishing phenomenon, these big volumes. They're going to make a whole shelf by the time they're done. I think there's one after this. But I know what I'm getting. When it comes to something like this, I know what I'm getting. I will still read it anyway, because I have never read the unabridged and carefully curated complete diaries of Chip's Canon. This is new in that regard. As far as I know, that's never been done before. I read a big one-volume abridgment decades and decades ago, but this has been a revelation. And it's catty and it's name droppy, so it's not hard to get through. They're 1,000 pages long, but it's not hard to get through them. Then we have something that I don't think I've ever read. I don't know if this is in a series, and I don't think it doesn't seem familiar to me at all. It's a cozy mystery. It's by Vicky Delaney, and it is The Game is a Footnote. It's a murder mystery taking place in a Sherlock Holmes bookstore. And there you have a book on a wooden table. You have a fireplace with a fire going. You've got dogs that are always little, and you've got a cat and books on shelves. And these are all absolute signs that you're dealing with a cozy mystery. That's what this is, a cozy mystery, in which the murder is kind of a party game. And the thing the reader is supposed to enjoy is the location and the quirky characters. Think of Murder, She Wrote, the TV show, where no one is much traumatized by the murder. The way that cozy mystery authors usually get around that is by having the dead person be someone that everybody hated. Which always seems to me, as I mentioned the other day or last year, always seems to me to be pretty much nakedly sociopathic. But I don't dislike cozy murder mysteries. I love murder mysteries of any kind. So I'll give this a try. Here's hoping that the cat is not uppity. And that's hoping against hope. But then we have a work of ancient history. I will be reading this before it wings its way to James Holder. This is Pharaohs of the Sun, The Rise and Fall of Tutankhamun's Dynasty by Chef Boyardee. This is one of, I think, probably 8 Tutankhamun books that are coming out just in the first quarter of 2023. So James Holder's going to be busy reading these things. I don't know if he'll agree to review any of them, but they're all going to him once I'm done with them. Or I can usually settle for the PDF. Publicists will usually send me a PDF, and if I'm going to get a good review of a book out of sending it somewhere, I'll send the book. I don't need to hold on to it. The PDF is fine by me. What can we say? We encountered King Tut a few times last year, right? I'm not going to miss a book on him, but there are many books on him coming out in the new year. Don't know why. It was 2022 that was the centenary of finding King Tut's tomb and opening it and kicking off Egyptomania. That was maybe they're thinking that definitely spilled into 1903 or 1923. So maybe they're thinking, or maybe these things were rushed into print and are only now flooding the market. There's got to be a reason. 1 or 2 books at the same time would be coincidence, but we're talking 6 or 7. There's got to be a reason for that. And then we have something that we saw on this channel. I didn't grab any physical books for this Friday read. This is by Richard Bradford, and it is Tough Guy, new from Bloomsbury, a short biography of Norman Mailer. I think we got a finished copy of this on this channel last year, and I believe that I expressed my worry. I have a worry about this book, that it will be hagiography, that it will view Mailer through the lens of his own PR stunts, instead of through the lens of the documents, through the lens of eyewitness accounts, drunken interviews that were done on video, or worst of all, more than I can possibly expect of any biographer. I don't know anything about Richard Bradford, but I would at least like the biographer to look at Mailer through actual historical evidence rather than his blousy, overblown saint's life of himself. I'd at least like a biographer to do that. Now, ideally, I would also like the biographer to look at his work, which stinks like flybone gorgonzola. It's absolutely terrible. Library of America or not, most of it is absolutely terrible. He wrote one great novel, and that had the misfortune of happening at the start of his career. I will read this thing, I will assess it, I will review it, but I am not expecting that Richard Bradford will be fair about the writing. I've encountered in 50 years almost nobody who was fair about I shouldn't say that. I don't mean to open a can of worms here, but I've encountered almost no man who was fair about the writing. For 50 years, going back to when this author started his career. But especially once it got going and once the Norman Mailer public persona was set in place. After that, all of his male critics clearly want to be him, which is deadly for a critic. If you're a critic and you want to be the subject of your review is worthless. His female critics weren't always like that. Joan Didion was way too generous to him, but Kakutani of the Times was not. So we'll see. I'm going into this with a wide open mind. I have read a Norman Mailer biography before, and I was not pleased with. In order to swallow and then regurgitate the Norman Mailer PR version of his life and times, you have to lie to your readers. I'm not talking about interpretation here. You have to lie just like Mailer did. The facts are no. If we're talking about a spin on facts, then no, you're not lying. You're just being a credulous dolt. But we're not talking about that. That's not what Mailer did. He lied about the facts. So even if you don't put his wretched books through the meat grinder, you should at least be willing not to lie on his behalf. We'll see. We shall see. Then I think this is our last one. Yes, it is. This is by Paul de Gelder, and this is another natural history of sharks. The subtitle is Why We Need to Save the World's Most Misunderstood Predator. We obviously should. We don't need to. We should save them, but I don't think that's going to happen. But misunderstood predator? Well, sure. Sure, absolutely. If you go flopping around in the ocean and a 10-foot shark finds you, it's probably going to bite you to find out what you are. And you won't survive that. Or not all of you will. So that part is not misunderstood. I do not understand the young friends I have who go out surfing in the half hour before dawn, who like to be on the water, as they put it, when the sun comes up, and who often, if they're lucky enough, and they are, but they won't always be, if they're lucky enough to come walking out of the surf, exhausted, happy, unbelievably happy, an hour later. If they're lucky enough to be walking out of the surf, they will routinely talk about whether or not it was a good shark day or a bad shark day. And I'm just stunned every time I hear that. Every time that's in an email or a Voxer message, I always want to say, well, but a bad shark day changes your life forever. Even if it doesn't end your life, you're suddenly an amputee. You're suddenly someone who doesn't have any legs anymore, or has only one leg. And everything is different. It happens in 5 seconds, and that's it. If you're lucky enough to get to shore and get tourniqueted, your life is still completely different. Which is extra ironic in the case of this book, because I believe that the author is a shark attack survivor. I think he only has one hand. I think he lost a hand to a shark. I'll have to check on that before I review this thing. But that's the last of my Friday Reads, a shark book. Naturally, I am sticking to known quantities here to ease my way back into BookTube. But that's a Friday Reads, my first one of the year. Unlike the rest of you, or most of the rest of you, I did not carry over any reading projects from the old year. But I still want to hear about yours. I still want to hear what you're looking at for the new year, even if you did carry over reading projects from the old year. I imagine that a lot of you have ambitions, have made plans discreetly specific to 2023. Reading plans. I'm seeing a lot of reading plans videos. I'm slowly getting back into watching everybody's videos and leaving comments and liking the videos and whatnot. I will slowly but surely get back into that. My reintegration into the present has been slower this year than usual. But I would still love to hear, either in the comments to this video or on Voxer or in an email, what your own reading resolutions are for this year. If you're not a booktuber, you should be, first of all. But if you're not a booktuber, I'd love to hear what you're looking at. A brand new year. You're in the early week of January. What are you thinking about for the new year? Do you want to read more books? I myself exceeded my grand total for the most books read in 1 year. I exceeded my total last year. So last year, 2022, I read more books in 2022 than I read in any year of my life. And I'm naturally hoping to exceed that number in 2023. That would be great. I have a number in mind. It's a rather simple number in mind. But I'd love to know if that's true for you. Anything about it. All the usual Friday Read stuff. I'm rambling because I don't have my laser-like focus back yet. But I'll wrap up this video. and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.